सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर भोक्ता dugdam Gitamrutam Mahat. Thank you again to everyone for joining us in this Shrimad Bhagavad Gita lecture series. As we start the 20th lecture, we'll be entering chapter 6, Adhyay 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. In the very first couplet, Shri Krishna Bhagwan tells Arjun, Anashritaha karma phalam, karyam karma karotiyah, sasanyasi cha yogi cha, na niragni na chakriyaha. This couplet is important to us in the BAPS organization because in 2016, when Pramukh Swami Maharaj passed away in Saranpur, during his cremation ceremony, Ramdev Ji Maharaj arrived. And when he spoke, he quoted this shlok from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, number 1. And talking about Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he said that what is written here by Shri Krishna Bhagwan, this is seen in Pramukh Swami Maharaj's life. He was a true yogi, a true sannyasi. In fact, he was the guru of all yogis. He was the guru of the entire Rishi Parampara. So this shlok has a special place in all of our hearts. Chapter 6 is unique in that this chapter, there seems to be more of a back and forth between Arjun and Krishna. As we said before, asking questions that are relevant to your life. That is the means to get the right answer. And with that answer, we can increase our wisdom to reach enlightenment. This chapter is a good example of Pariprashna. The main discussion in this chapter is how to control the mind and reach Samadhi. Samadhi, again, is that constant connection with God. We want to be able to live our day-to-day lives as teachers or engineers, no matter what job we do, having this constant happiness in everything that we do. Guru Mahant Swami Maharaj gives an example. He says that there are certain areas in North India that have no rivers actually physically running through them. But still, despite that, they're green all year round. And the reason is that they have a constant source of water underground. They get their nourishment from within. And in the same way, when we reach Samadhi, we might not have anything on the outside to make us happy about. No nice places to go or no nice things to have. But we'll have this constant source of nourishment from within us, keeping us happy all the time, from within. Bhagwan starts off by telling Arjun, Atmaiva yatmano bandhur, Atmaiva ripuratmanaha. Here, Bhagwan is telling Arjun that you can be your own best friend, or you may be your own worst enemy. Meaning, there is something that you have to do. Don't be a fatalist and just throw everything onto God. If you want to succeed, then you will. You have to put in the effort as well. Pramukh Swami Maharaj used to give an example. He used to say that even a lion has to get up and go hunting for food. A deer won't just come and jump into its mouth. Everyone has to do their work, and only then will you get God's blessings. One time a devotee came to Pramukh Swami Maharaj and asked for certain blessings. Pramukh Swami Maharaj gave him those blessings. A little while later, he came back again and asked for blessings again for the same purpose. And the second time, Pramukh Swami Maharaj told him, this time I'm giving you blessings that you can put in the work to achieve what you need to do. The blessings are for the work. And then Bhagwan tells Arjun, Jitatmanaha prashantasya, paramatma samahitaha, shitoshna sukha dukkheshu, tatha man apamana yoho, gnana vignana truptatma, kutasto vijitendriyaha, yukta ityuchyate yogi, samaloshtashma kanchanaha. We discussed this before, in brief, this idea of how to see everything in the world as equal, all experiences and all things. Samaloshtashma kanchanaha means that this person sees a pile of dirt, stone, and gold, everything is equal. And the way to do it is to see everything as being given to you by God. Every situation that we're put in, good or bad, we were put in it by God. Now it is up to us to decide how we want to react to it. A person who accepts all situations equally still understands the difference between what stones are and what gold are. He knows where each is supposed to go, where each belongs, but he doesn't hold one in higher regard than the other. Both are neutral to him. And this idea of neutrality and reaching this state of equilibrium brings Krishna Bhagwan into the topic of meditation. Yog means connection. Here in the 6th chapter, Bhagwan is also going to use that word to describe meditation or dhyan. The 6th chapter is a practical step-by-step guide on how to use meditation to achieve the ultimate yog, a constant connection with Bhagwan, and reach samadhi. I'm not going to go through every shlok, but certain portions from certain shloks. Krishna Bhagwan tells Arjun, Shucho deshe pratishtaya, rahasi stitaha, ekaki, nirashi, aparigraha. To practice yoga, first you have to go into a secluded place, rahasi stitaha, and be alone, ekaki. Why? If you have your pet with you while you're trying to meditate, you won't be able to focus on God, you'll be focusing on your pet. You can't meditate if you have your child with you in your lap. You can't meditate if there's a lot of noise around you. Shucho deshe pratishtaya. The place has to be clean. If it's dirty, if there's bugs, if there's something that's going to bother you and take your mind away from God, it's just going to make it harder for you to focus. The seat where you are, where you're sitting, it shouldn't be too high or too low. Everything should be clean. And you should sit straight. Your body, neck, head, everything in a straight line. And then stare steadily at your nose. Then, what should we focus on? Krishna Bhagwan tells Arjun, with an unagitated, subdued mind, without any fear, one should meditate upon me in your heart. Make me the ultimate goal of your life. Manaha sanyamya mat chitto yukta asita mat paraha. Focus on me. Now, then Bhagwan switches, he goes back one step to talk about maintaining our physical body first. There is no possibility of becoming a true yogi if one eats too much or one eats too little. Bhagwan says you can't become a yogi if you sleep too much or you don't sleep enough. You have to have temperance in everything. Bhagwan Shri Krishna tells Arjun, Yukta ahara viharasya, Yukta chestasya karmasu, Yukta swapana avabodhasya, Yogo bhavati dukkhaha. If you eat too much, you'll become lethargic, and then you can't do seva, perform service. If you don't eat enough, also you won't have enough energy to do seva. Again, if you don't eat enough, you also won't remember anything you heard in the discourses from the Pariprashna. In the Chandogya Upanishad, Shvetketu fasts for multiple days, and when his father asks him, what have you learned? He can't remember anything after fasting for too long. If you move around too much, like a human fidget spinner, then you won't be able to focus on anything and get any work done. Or, alternatively, if you stay in one place for too long, you'll get lazy. Our bodies are like a machine. If we don't use it, then they'll rust. If you sleep too long, you'll miss an important moment. And if you don't sleep enough, well, science says that's like being drunk. The key to everything is balance. No extremes. The Buddha gives an example about this. He says, if you tighten the string of an instrument too tight, it'll break. If you keep the string too loose, it won't play the right sound. It has to be exact to its personal tuning. Every string has its own tuning. And when every string is exact to its personal tuning, the music will be good. Each string is different. Similarly, each of us is different. Based on our heights, our weight, our metabolism, what work we have to accomplish in the day, all of our needs are not the same. So we have to find our physical balance. What works for us personally? What works for you might not work for your spouse. What you need to eat won't be the same amount how much as your children need to eat. But find what works for you and stick to it. We have to bring in this balance. But how? Now Bhagwan adds an adverb to how to do dhyan. He says, shanehi shanehi. Have patience. This isn't going to happen immediately. You have to take your time and slowly become an expert in this. Once in Bhagwan Swaminarayan's time, his Paramans Sadhu disciples were meditating. And when they would meditate, they would take their top garment and cover their faces so they wouldn't see anything in the outside world. One shepherd saw the Paramanso meditating and he asked them, what are you doing? They told him, we're meditating on the form of God. He thought, oh, okay, let me try this as well. So he sat down and he covered his face. And within 2 minutes, he got up so frustrated. He said, all of you are wasting your time. The Paramansas have been doing it for years. And he thought that he would be able to master the same amount in just his first minute. That's not possible. Shanehi shanehi. It will happen slowly. In life, if you want something instant, if you want instant light, then turn on a lamp. In the same way, in spirituality, there is no such thing as instant enlightenment. Forget about it. God has said it will take time. Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that you should keep patience in meditation for up to 100 years. Meaning it may take your entire life to master it completely. The Western world today is understanding the benefits of this type of true, deep meditation. And here in the Western world, quite often we use the term mindfulness. Decades ago, a boy by the name of Mingyur Rinpoche used to get panic attacks. He told his father about them, and his father taught him not to be afraid of those thoughts, but instead to welcome those thoughts in and focus on them. Don't avoid them. He taught his son how to meditate, and through meditation, he taught his son how to control his mind. Eventually, Mingyur became a Buddhist monk. When he was 41 years old, scientists in Wisconsin, they called him to America and they studied his brain. And they saw that he had the brain of someone who was almost a decade younger than him. When he would meditate, the fMRI machine that was scanning everything would see that the empathy areas in his brain would shoot up 700 to 800%. And in the final report, the scientists wrote that these reportings befuddle the mind. They befuddle science. We only see such activity when the brain has a seizure. But the difference is, in a seizure, the brain is actually being seized. And here, he had complete control over his mind. Science continued to study the long-term meditators, and they found out that they had much more control over every aspect of their mind. It's not like that necessarily for beginners. Even they said that. But we see that the benefits of even putting a few years of practice behind meditation, that how much it can have for our minds. Expert meditators have a higher tolerance for pain. It's not that they can withstand more physical pain. Their hands will break just like yours and mine, but they don't feel the unpleasantness of it as much. Their brains, parts, their amygdala reports show that they don't view pain as a terrible ordeal, just as another neutral event. Sama shitoshna sukha dukheshu. Putting this in spiritual terms, none of us have control over everything that happens in our lives, but we do have full control over how we respond. Now, we can prevent reactions that would cause us regret in the future. We can control those emotions which are currently controlling us. Now, in many places, schools are teaching mindfulness. The corporate world is embracing it. People all over the world are appreciating it. And they've all realized that investing money and time behind improving your mental health is money and time well spent. We should also realize the same and practice some form of daily meditation. There are hundreds of different forms of meditation, and not all are for the same purpose. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan is showing the way to meditate to focus our minds on Bhagwan and achieve that ultimate yog, the eternal connection with God. Now Arjun hears all of the instructions on how to meditate, and then he responds with the same thought that we all have. Arjun tells Sri Krishna Bhagwan, Chanchalam hi manaha Krishna, pramathi balavad drudam, tasyaham nigraham manye, vayoriva sudushkaram. Arjun said, Krishna, what you're saying to me seems very impractical. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and so strong, stronger than me right now. Balavad drudam. And to me, to control the mind seems more difficult than even trying to control the wind. We don't know what's happening in our minds. Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that we barely know any of the thoughts we get throughout the entire day. And the Gita is telling us to pause and try to understand what we are thinking. The next step after understanding what thought we're having is to understand why we're thinking in this way. Is it the current environment outside of me? What is it? And when we know what's causing us to think in a certain way, we can either increase or decrease it based on whether it provides us good or bad thoughts. The mind is naturally hard to control. That's what Arjun is saying here. But you have to train your mind, like you would train any other muscle. If the mind is weak, it will break easily. Arjun's body is just fine in the Gita, but his mind is broken. Normally, you'll experience the same, that it is our mind that breaks first and then our bodies. In the brain, there's an area called the default mode network, or the DMN. And neurologists say that this is the area of the brain that lets us Basically time travel. Think of the past or plan for the future. Now using it, we endlessly live in negative thoughts of the past or endlessly live in anxiety about the future. Gunatidanand Swami 200 years ago in his scripture described the mind like an uncontrollable monkey. Scientists today have also dubbed the DMN the monkey mind. Shankaracharya has defined two things, dukh, which in English can be taken as either misery or sadness, and chinta, which can be taken as either anxiety or fear. Shankaracharya is saying that misery or fear, anxiety, what are these things? And he says that dukh is when you think of the past. Chinta is when you think of the future. That means when you think of the past, you're only guaranteed misery and sadness. When you think of the future, you're only guaranteed anxiety and fear. Thus, Shankaracharya is teaching us that you can only be happy in the very present moment. When you come to the present, another area of your brain activates. It's not the DMN anymore. Different parts of your brain activate depending on what you're thinking about. It isn't the same all the time. When it's in the present, it's your frontal lobe. Science is currently catching up to us where the scriptures were, where the rishis were thousands of years ago. And then after Arjun places this argument, for perhaps the first time in the entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Bhagwan actually agrees with him. Krishna Bhagwan says, Asanshayam mahabaho, manor dur nigraham chalam. You're right. Without a doubt, it is very hard to defeat the mind, but it is not impossible. Difficult is not the same as impossible. And then Krishna Bhagwan gives two methods. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha gruhyate. Abhyas means either study or practice. In Arjun's life, we see that he studied, practiced many different things, but he's known as the best archer in the world. So that was something that he studied and practiced more than anyone else. For example, when Arjun was a small boy learning under Dronacharya had a rule. He said, you can study with me as long as you want, but when you go to eat, you have to leave. You can't come back afterwards because it'll be dark. Arjun would study until it would get dark, and then he would go to eat last, after all of the other students. Dronacharya, in secret, had told the people in the kitchen that when Arjun comes to eat, make sure that you light 2 or 3 small lamps at the time, so that he's always eating with fire around him. So he's always eating in the brightness, in light. One day, while Arjun was eating and he was putting the food in his mouth, there must have been a gust of wind, and the 2-3 lamps all went out, and it was dark. And as he's putting the food in his mouth, Arjun realizes that I'm still able to eat even though there is no light. My hand is finding my mouth. And then he says a word. The Mahabharata has written that at that point, Arjun says the word abhyas. That because I have studied how to eat in the light, I can eat even in the dark. And then he went back to study archery, now in the dark. He realized that if I've practiced so much during the day, I should also be able to use nighttime to practice. And now he started listening with his ears, firing with more than just his eyes. When he went back at night, Dronacharya came. And Dronacharya said, I have been waiting every night for you to realize that half of your day goes behind just sleeping. He was so focused, Arjun, that one time when Dronacharya was testing all of the children, he called them all and he put a small replica of a bird in a tree far away. And he told all of the Pandavas and Kauravas who were there studying with him, he said, what do you see over there? And Yudhishthira said, I see a tree. Then he would ask, do you see the bird? Yudhishthira said, I don't see the bird. Then he would ask another, what do you see? Sometimes the student would get to the bird even. When he got to Duryodhan, Dronacharya asked, Duryodhan, what do you see? I see only Bhim. Of course, that's all you see. And then he told him to leave. Eventually, he got to the last student, who was Arjun. And he said, Arjun, what do you see? I see the tree. Do you see the bird in the tree? Yes. Dronacharya said, can you focus on just one part of the bird? I can. Focus on just the head. I'm focused. Focus on just the eye. I'm focused. And wherever his teacher taught him, he was able to zero in with that study, with that practice, with that focus, with abhyas. Imagine how good of an archer Arjun had become when it was time to win Draupadi's hand in marriage. The challenge was such that he had to jump into scales at the same time. and balance himself, looked down into water, and there was a fish moving in a circle above him. While looking down, he had to shoot an arrow through the eye of the moving fish while trying to balance himself in the scales. His abhyas of archery made him the best archer in the world. And now Krishna Bhagwan is telling him, use that same technique, study, and constant practice to control your mind towards God. Bhagwan is going to also give him a message that if you don't beat the mind completely, then the mind is going to beat you. For example, there's an anecdote that once a man had a horse. The horse became sick, so he took it to the doctor. The doctor checked the horse, and he gave the man 2 pills and a tube. And he said, the only way this horse is going to take the medicine is if you put the tube in the horse's mouth and then blow the 2 pills into its mouth. The man came back the next day, and he told the doctor, I'm itching all over. I'm having an allergic reaction to the pills. The doctor said, the pills weren't for you to take, the pills were for the horse. You're supposed to put the tube into its mouth and then blow the 2 pills down the horse's throat. What happened? The man said, I put the tube into the horse's mouth, but before I blew, the horse blew, and the pills went down my throat. What this story teaches us is that if we don't make the first move, then the mind will. If we don't defeat the mind, it's going to come after us. It will defeat us. And the other method that Krishna Bhagwan gives here to Arjun, he says, Vairagyena cha gruyate, through detachment. We, as a people, as a society, have to stop making our lives so easy. We prefer to enjoy luxury. And the problem with that luxury is that we enjoy these new luxuries so much regularly that they become habit. What was once a luxury now becomes our baseline, and then we need something further. Our level goes up, and in the process, we become more and more sensitive and irritable. On the opposite side, we see how great sadhus, great swamis like Yogiji Maharaj have lived. Yogiji Maharaj one time was traveling through the villages of Gujarat. At one moment, he took a pause, and one of his attendant swamis took his shoes off to empty the shoes of any pebbles that had gathered. Yogiji Maharaj saw this, and he told him, keep 2 pebbles in each shoe, so that at every step I take, it reminds me I'm not the body, I'm the soul. Very simple methods to remind him to stay detached from the world. One time, Yogiji Maharaj was in the village of Nondana. At night, before he went to sleep, the devotees had provided 2 thin beddings for him to put on top of each other to become equal to about 1 level mattress to sleep on. Yogiji Maharaj, when the devotees left, he told one of the attendants, take one off. The attendant said, Swami, they're both very thin. Putting them together is equal to 1 mattress. Swami said, no, take it off, so that every time I turn in my sleep, I'm reminded that this body is just another piece of earth, like the earth underneath it. Very small methods to constantly stay detached from the world. This is the daily practice that leads us toward permanent detachment from all bodily pleasures. And then Arjun raises his last doubt. He says, I understand that this is going to take a lot of time, and I'm ready to do it, but what happens if while I'm on the path of doing all of this, while I'm on the path of enlightenment, I die before I actually become enlightened? And then Krishna Bhagwan gives a great blessing at the end of the 6th chapter. He says, Nahi kalyana krut kaschit durgatim tat gacchati. In Hindu Dharma, death is not permanent. If you don't achieve liberation in this life, then in your next life, you will pick up exactly where you left off, spiritually. And Bhagwan tells Arjun that no matter what you do, everything is a positive, and it's only going to be better as you move forward. At the end of this lecture, I want to pray that we learned quite a bit about how to control our minds. I pray that through abhyas, constant study and practice, and through detachment, vairagya, we can also have a constant focus on Bhagwan and reach enlightenment in this very life. Astu.